Have you ever thought about a single country that has the highest, most snow-covered mountains in the world, and at the same time, these vast, sun-baked deserts? Well, that's India for you. Today, we're going to take a quick but deep dive into the incredible geographic diversity that is packed into this one nation, and really see how that landscape shapes, well, pretty much everything.
I mean, just look at this. On one side, you've got these dry, sandy deserts that just stretch on forever. And on the other, you have these incredibly lush, green waterfalls just teeming with life. So the big question is, how on earth is all of this possible in just one country? That is the mystery we're going to unravel today as we explore the geography that makes these amazing contrasts a reality.
Okay, so before we dive into all that incredible diversity on the ground, we got to zoom out a bit. We need to get a handle on the sheer scale we're talking about here. So first things first, let's place India on the world map and see just how big it is.
We're talking about 3.28 million square kilometers. Now, that's a huge number. So to put it in perspective, that's more than 10 times the size of a country like Germany. This isn't just a statistic. It's a massive canvas. And that is exactly why it has room for so many completely different worlds inside of it.
Now, let's travel across that canvas, say from top to bottom. If you were to start a journey from the icy peaks of the Himalayas way up in the north and travel all the way down to the tropical beaches of Kanyakumari in the south, you would have covered about 3,200 kilometers. That incredible distance is one of the biggest reasons for its wild range of climates.
And get this, it's not just long, it's incredibly wide too. The distance from Arunachal Pradesh in the far, far east to the salt marshes of Kutch out west is almost as huge, measuring around 2,900 kilometers. This country is so wide, in fact, that the sun rises almost 2 hours earlier on one side than it does on the other. So what does this massive coastline mean for the shape of the country? Well, it gives southern India its very distinct shape, a peninsula. And a peninsula, as you can see right here, is just a piece of land that's surrounded by water on three sides. For India, that means you've got the Arabian Sea on the west, the Bay of Bengal on the east, and the massive Indian Ocean down to the south. So you've got this huge coastline, giving India a really strong connection to the sea, but at the same time, it's deeply connected by land to the rest of Asia. It actually shares borders with quite a few neighbors. Let's take a quick look at who they are. All right, so in total, India shares a land border with 7 different countries. If you look to the northwest, you've got Pakistan and a little sliver of a border with Afghanistan. To the north, you have the huge Himalayan nations of China, Nepal, and Bhutan. And then, finally, as we swing over to the east, you find Bangladesh and Myanmar. Okay, we've got the big picture. We see where India is and how big it is. Now for the really fun part, our great geographic tour. We are going to journey through all of India's major landscapes, from the highest mountains on Earth all the way out to these tiny tropical islands. This physical map is going to be our guide. Just look at all the different colors and textures here. You've got the deep browns of the mountains, the vibrant greens of the plains, the kind of ochre yellow of the plateau. Each one of those colors represents a completely different world we're about to step into. And where else would we start but in the extreme north, with the absolutely magnificent Himalayas? Their name literally means the abode of snow, which is perfect. They stand like these giant sentinels, separating the entire Indian subcontinent from the rest of Asia. And in doing so, they have a massive impact on the climate. Now, it's easy to just picture the Himalayas as this one giant wall of rock, right? But it's actually a bit more complex. Think of it as 3 distinct parallel ranges, all running alongside each other. First, you have the Great Himalaya, or the Himadri, which is home to the world's highest peaks. Just south of that is the Middle Himalaya, or Himachal, where you'll find a lot of popular hill stations. And then the final, southernmost range is called the Shiwalik. Okay, so as we come down from those towering peaks, the whole landscape it flattens out dramatically. We've arrived in the vast northern Indian plains. These are level, sprawling lands, and they are, without a doubt, the agricultural heart of the entire country. But what makes them so incredibly special? Well, the secret is something called alluvial deposits. Basically, think of the huge rivers that are born in the Himalayas, like the Indus, the Ganga, and the Brahmaputra. As they flow down, they carry this incredibly fine, nutrient-rich soil with them. And over thousands and thousands of years, they've spread it all across these plains, creating one of the most fertile places on the entire planet.
Now, let's take a hard turn west, and I mean a hard turn. The landscape completely transforms. Welcome to the Great Indian Desert. We're talking a vast, dry, hot expanse of shifting sands with very, very little vegetation. It is a world away from the lush green plains we were just standing in.
All right, heading south of those plains, we run into the Peninsular Plateau. It's got this rough triangular shape, and its surface is really uneven, filled with all sorts of hills and valleys. This is an ancient piece of land, and it's basically a treasure chest of minerals. It's super rich in things like coal and iron ore that help fuel the nation. Now, framing that plateau are two big mountain ranges, the Ghats, and they're like two very different siblings. On the west, you have the Western Ghats, which form this almost unbroken wall of mountains. Because of that, the coastal plain next to them is very narrow. On the other hand, the Eastern Ghats are more broken up and uneven, which means they open up to much wider coastal plains where the big rivers flow out to the sea.
So we've gone from the roof of the world down to the coasts. We've covered the mainland, right? Not quite. Our tour isn't over yet because India's territory stretches way out into the ocean. And that, of course, brings us to the islands. There are two main groups to know about. Off the western coast, out in the Arabian Sea, you'll find the Lakshadweep Islands. And then way out in the Bay of Bengal, to the southeast of the mainland, are the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. They're actually the peaks of a huge underwater volcanic mountain range. And the story behind the Lakshadweep Islands is just, well, it's amazing. They are coral islands. This means they weren't formed by volcanoes or shifting rock. They were built by life itself. Over thousands and thousands of years, the skeletons of these tiny little sea creatures called polyps built up, layer after layer after layer, until these beautiful islands literally grew right out of the sea. So we've seen it all: mountains, plains, deserts, islands. But so what? What does it all mean? In this last part, we're going to connect all these physical features to human life. Because the most crucial question is, why does any of this geography actually matter? Well, let's think back to those fertile northern plains for a second. It is absolutely no accident that this region is one of the most densely populated, jam-packed places on Earth. That rich soil, fed by those Himalayan rivers, can support millions and millions of people. It's a perfect, direct link between the landscape and where people choose to build their lives. And really, that brings us to the most important point of all. This incredible variety in the land has, naturally, led to an equally incredible variety of cultures, languages, and traditions. And you might think that sounds like a recipe for division, but it's actually the nation's greatest strength. As the source material puts it so beautifully, in this diversity, we find unity that is reflected in traditions that bind us as one nation. So, as we wrap up our whirlwind tour, I want to leave you with this thought. We've seen the snowy peaks of the Himalayas that literally shape a continent's climate. We've seen the life-giving river plains that feed millions. We've even seen islands that were built by tiny little creatures. Of all these incredible Indian landscapes, which one calls to you?